Welcome to Michelle's Making. Hope you're ready for coffee, crafts, cookies, and cocktails. Let's get going.
Welcome and welcome back to those of you who are returning. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for subscribing and helping the channel grow. I do appreciate that. Today is National Play Monopoly Day, and here's a fun fact for you. Do you know that Queen Elizabeth has banned the playing of Monopoly in the palace or by the royal family? And the reason is said to be that they're too competitive when they play Monopoly. It's also Carbonated Beverage with Caffeine Day. Well, I'm having my caffeine, not necessarily a carbonated beverage, but maybe that's what you enjoy. So today's the day to enjoy it. Let's make it a great one. I'm enjoying pumpkin spice because we're coming up on Thanksgiving. And that's the perfect time to enjoy pumpkin and everything. We're going to have a huge Thanksgiving feast at my house. So I'll be doing a lot of baking and cooking, and maybe I'll share some of that with you in the upcoming videos. In the meanwhile, make it a great one and let's get going.
Today I'm making delicious pecan brownies. For this recipe, you'll use eggs, unsweetened cocoa powder, vanilla extract, salt, baking powder, butter, granulated sugar, all-purpose flour, and semi-sweet chocolate chips. For the pecan layer, you use light brown sugar, light corn syrup, butter, vanilla, salt, eggs, and chopped pecans. Line your pan with parchment paper and spray that with cooking spray. Be sure to leave the excess parchment paper out the sides. That'll be important later on. I'll link this recipe in the description box. You begin by mixing your eggs, cocoa powder, vanilla, salt, baking powder in a stand mixer at medium-low speed for about 2 minutes. Scrape down the bowl as needed. Once that's mixing well, you melt the butter on the stove and add the granulated sugar to it. The sugar won't melt completely, but it will begin to dissolve into the butter, and that's important before you add it to the chocolate mixture. Next, I added the chocolate chips to the flour. I had read somewhere that to keep the chocolate chips from sinking to the bottom of what you're baking, add them to the flour first and then mix them in, and that prevents them from sinking. Add your butter mixture, butter and sugar, into your chocolate mixture and cream well. Scrape your bowl down as needed periodically. Next, add the all-purpose flour and chocolate chips a little at a time to avoid having a flour mess everywhere. Once everything is well mixed, you'll pour it into your prepared pan, and you're going to cook it for about 30 to 34 minutes. You remember, brownies don't always look completely done in the center, and that's okay. You just want it to have set. The oven's been preheated to 350 degrees. While the brownie portion is baking, you can make your pecan mixture. You'll begin by melting your butter and adding the brown sugar to this. You don't need a stand mixer or even an electric mixer for this. You can just whisk it together. Next, you add your light corn syrup. After that has been whisked a little, you'll add your vanilla, salt, and eggs. Next, you add your pecans. This recipe calls for 3.5 cups of chopped pecans. Those bags that I had were 2 cups. I had a full bag and a partial bag. And when I measured it out, I had just a little less than 1.5 cups in the partial bag. So it worked out perfectly. Once this is mixed, just set it aside. You're going to pour it on top of the brownies when they come out of the oven. Now you see having that parchment paper there came in handy because it is a little bit loose, the pecan mixture, and it does want to flow over a little bit because my brownie pan was pretty full. I did decide to put this on a cookie sheet before putting it back in the oven because I was afraid it might bubble over. And it did bubble over a little bit, but not much because it bakes for about another 30 minutes in the oven. It's important that this cool thoroughly before you attempt cutting it. So I cooled it for 3 hours in the refrigerator before I cut it up. And that extra parchment paper let me lift it completely out of the pan and then cut it on the counter. And there you have it, delicious pecan brownies. Our craft today is a silver garland. I got this idea to wrap a vine, wired vine garland type thing I picked up at Walmart around these shower rings that I picked up at Dollar Tree. I believe I used 5 packs of the shower rings and 2.5 packs of the leaf garland. And you can see here how I'm wrapping it around. The piece was maybe a foot long around each of the rings, and then I just left the part where they snap together open, hooked it onto the other ring, and then covered that part with the vine. I really wasn't sure what I was going to do with this, and I actually got this far on the project a couple of months ago, and I just didn't know what to do. But then this year, I changed up my holiday decorations a little bit, and I did need a little bit of a garland to go on the top of my TV center. Once I had the rings all hooked together, the next step was to wrap some fairy lights that I had around the vine. This type of greenery didn't look very Christmassy, I guess, or wintry to me. So I took some wired greenery that I had and twisted it around the hooks, just to give it a little more fullness and to give it some of that Christmas look with the pine needles. Remember, I'm trying to use up things I already have in my stash, and the piece that I had wasn't quite long enough to go the full length. So I took these wire ties that are greenery from Dollar Tree and added it in pieces that didn't get covered, and just to give a little more fullness to it. Next, I took these silver poinsettias that I also had in my stash, and they did come from Dollar Tree as well. I think a couple of years ago I got them. But I decided to put one in the center, and then I took this sprig of silver twigs, I don't know what it's called, but again, it's from Dollar Tree. I just cut all the pieces off individually and just glued them in around the poinsettia. Next, I took these 2 pieces of silvery, glittery fern type, also from Dollar Tree, and just spread them out a little bit. And my idea was I bent the wire that it came on and was going to thread it through each of the end hooks, but upside down, so it would kind of hang down like a little swaggy looking thing at the ends. I had 2 more of those silver poinsettias, and I put one of those on each of the ends. Later, I took some paddle wire that I had and just wrapped it around the poinsettia and the silver fern to kind of keep it secured on the end. Like I said, I'm trying to use up things I already had, and I had one more sprig of these silver twigs and decided to glue them in along the garland. And also I had these little stars with a bell and snowflake with a bell. They're ornaments from Dollar Tree, and they come 2 for $1. So I ended up having 3 packs, so $3 worth. So when I'm looking at what I'm spending here, I've probably got, let's see, $3 in the ornaments, maybe $15 in if you were to go out and buy everything now to make it. But like I said, this was all things I was just pulling out of my stash and trying to put it together. But in the end, it turned out great. It looks excellent over my TV, and I'm really happy with it. Let me know if you like doing this type of craft where you're just pulling things that you already have and trying to put them together to make something, or do you work along the lines of only going out and getting just what you need to do that particular craft and do it at that time and then having nothing left over and stashed away for another day? Let me know in the comments. Now, as I mentioned, this is where I took the paddle wire and just wired the end pieces so they wouldn't slip off. The last thing I did was take some of these snowflakes that I had. I think this was in a bag of like table glitter or table fillers that you have, and they were red and white and silver, and I just pulled out the silver ones and glued them randomly on the garland. But that's it for my silver garland, and I really love how this looks. And now it's time for my adult beverage. I'm going to enjoy a Washington apple today. It's made with sour apple liqueur, apple flavored whiskey, and cranberry juice. The recipe will be in the description box, but you add everything to the shaker with ice. Chill your glass. Shake, shake, shake until your drink is well chilled. Pour it in your glass, and the only thing left is to enjoy a Washington apple.
Well, folks, that's it for another week. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I really do appreciate it. Don't forget to take time to stop and smell the coffee. Make it a great week, and I'll see you next Friday.